Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of this series of Paint with Nate. I'm Nate and this is Paint. So where we're at now, Ogre's all fleshed up, he's being washed with just a regular flesh wash, and now I'm going to start going back in and doing some highlights. So I'm going to start with my flesh wash here, my flesh base, dwarf flesh, or dwarven flesh if you're using the coat arms. And as you can possibly hear, I've thinned this because it was almost out, so I've put some medium in it. So I'm going to be painting straight from the pot because it is quite thin now. But for this step, I would recommend thinning your paint before you go ahead, especially on a larger model like this. So I'm going to stick with my size 1 brush for now, and when I get to the face, I'll step down a few brush sizes just so I can keep that detail. So it is rather thin, but when you're doing a big model like this, you don't want your paint thick because you won't get you'll look very patchy. You need, when you're using on big smooth models, thin that paint. Maybe do 2 layers if you're not convinced. But yeah, don't use thick paint because on a big model like this, there's nowhere to hide sins. It does end up looking pretty terrible. But so with my first coat, I'm going back over a lot of the model and just kind of leaving where you can see the ink set properly and a little bit either side. So I'm trying to form a transition between the original base coat and the shaded area because the wash has tinted all of the paint. So I'm kind of painting over that. And you can see there already, it's taking on a bit of a lighter shade. It's getting a bit of muscle definition in there. And that's what I'm after. It's not a bad step this because you don't have to be hyper precise, except with the face. Just make sure don't overload your brush because that's when it squudges. And don't go crazy when you're doing details on the face. Yeah. If you've thinned your paint quite a bit, be mindful it starts to behave more like a wash than it does a paint. So it will try to run on you a bit. So again, easiest way to prevent that is make sure your brush isn't overloaded. For those not going straight from the pot, because like I said, this is the end of a pot for me, so I just thought I'll thin the pot because I think I've only got a tiny bit left in there. What I'm gonna do, what I would recommend doing is using an egg cup. No, I'll just use an old Easter egg cup, so that needs washing out, of course. I'll make my mix in that rather than on my palette. If I'm gonna do a large area, or like batch paint with it, because it keeps a little bit better. It doesn't spread about as much. The cup naturally kind of leads everything back into the center, and you get less waste. And ideally, when you're doing models like this, you want to be able to do it all from one batch, because unless you are very precise with your measures, you'll not get the same tone twice. So make a lot, and then that's not a problem. Right, let's paint the inner thigh here, and the between the thighs, because Heresy are a small independent company, and Andy the sculptor has a good sense of humor and appreciates anatomical accuracy. This ogre does in fact have genitals, which answers that question, what's behind the loincloth? Right. So you see here in the bigger areas, you can just brush that on, and it comes out nice and smooth. You can see how thin the paint is. Right, so that's half this guy done. I'm gonna stop video now. I'll continue painting on, and I'll show you. I'll come back for the next step. See you. Welcome back, guys. I've finished that step, as you can see. It's come out nice. As you can see, with being thinned, even on the bigger areas, you get nice smooth transitions, so it doesn't look too patchy. It looks a bit more realistic. So now moving on, to the final highlight step. What I'm gonna do is I'll put my palette in view. So probably at some point I will put my elbow in that. So I'm gonna start with our base, which is the dwarf flesh or dwarven flesh, because I want to keep a nice smooth transition. So you can see there how runny this is, and I'm not using the palette, the egg cup, because I'm only doing a final highlight, so I don't need a lot. Now I'm gonna go to elf flesh, which coat d'arm cell is, you've guessed it, elven flesh, which also is quite a thin paint, as you can see. So I'm gonna just I'll go about 1:1 on this. Well, it's quite thin, so the transition will do handle itself really. So we're almost about halfway through there. I'll put a tiny bit more dwarf flesh in that, because I think that's gone a bit too far to the elf side. There we go. Put those back. Right, so I'll now stick with my number 1 brush. That's its size, not its rating. I don't have a favorite brush. I'm not biased. So now I'm just going through. I'm catching. I want just to do the raised areas now. Areas where the light will catch, like the top of the calf. I'm giving that final bit of shaping. Places like the ankle. Down the Achilles tendon, the heel. Then I'm not going nuts here. I'm just those top areas. So don't have to be hyper precise. You don't have to get right up the edges, because you're just looking for a top highlight. Try to get places where you have bones close to the skin, like knuckles and knees and things, because well, that skin is genuinely lighter, so might as well try to paint realistically. And just look at the contour of the muscle, and then just trace it. Single line will do. You don't need to go nuts. It's with it being so thin. The paint being so thin, it does actually blend in really nice. I'm just going for a lot of subtlety here. Just trying to shape things a bit. But what I'm going to do is, because it's quite a big area, put the paint on, and I'm going to work it out. So I'm going to try to use the thinness of paint to get a nice blending transition here. So I'm working the paint out from the middle. So if you reload your brush, go back to the middle, work it out. That way you don't have an odd blotch. There we go. Smoothing those edges a bit. There we go. On the stomach, and again, something like this, you want to work from the middle and work your way out. Because big smooth areas like this are where you're gonna get caught out if you can't. It's not, well, I say caught out. You know, sometimes I'm trying to get away with something. But it's where it's gonna, brush strokes are gonna show more than anywhere. So don't overload your brush, and just, it helps to lick your brush as well if you're not averse to the taste of paint, because you can then just use that just to smooth things off a bit. There we go, we'll see how that looks like as it dries. I think that'll look pretty good. Get these folds there. Same here. Don't need to go nuts, just a few lines. And oops. Just go bring that up a bit. Back to that, 'cause that looks a bit patchy. There we go. Moving around, going around, go do a bit back. So there we go. You can see I'm just catching the highlights here. Have a look underneath, make sure that everything actually matches up. Right. So I would recommend when you're doing the face, it's worth going to a smaller brush. But Winsor and Newton's are phenomenal brushes, and you can get away with a lot. Because I'm just using the very tip now. And you can get quite a level of precision for what is quite like a big brush, relatively speaking, in the miniature world. So I'm just accentuating the face. And as anyone who's watched one of my videos before knows, final highlight, you concentrate on the T-zone. It doesn't matter whether it's a fine damsel in distress or it's a big old disgusting ogre. Light hits the same places on a humanoid face, so that's where I'm going. Right, so just do those little furrows in his brow. And just top of his head. And that's what to do is the arms. May sound obvious, but I know I am taking a lot of time here, but this is like I said, this should sound obvious, but if your model is primarily skin, spend that little bit longer on the skin, and your model will look better. You know, because well, it's just worth it, that little bit extra effort, because you're gonna notice the skin most of all on this. Sorry if that sounds just stating the very obvious there, but one, I'm trying to fill dead air, and two, you know, if I don't mention it, it's it's not been mentioned. And there might be someone out there who's just gone, oh yeah, that's no fault of their own. They might just be getting new into painting, and that's never occurred to them before. That's okay. So I've said to a lot of people before, you know, the difference between a top quality miniature painter, which I'm not claiming to be, I'm very middle of the road, and you know, the guy who's just the person who's just bought their first paint set and are wondering which end of their brush to hold, is battle hours. You know, the experienced miniature painter has spent more time, painting. End of. You know, they've maybe seen a few more techniques, they've tried a few more techniques out, but that just comes in time. You know, natural ability will only get you so far. Natural ability is that first step. It's what rung of the ladder you start on. It's not what rung you finish on. You know, if you have naturally steady hands, which I'm blessed with, then yeah, that is an advantage early on, but that is nothing that is going to hamper you down the road. You know, what you do is you compensate, you have a steadier base, and so that's why I'm aiming this at anyone, not just beginner painters or mid-level painters or whoever, but I want everyone kind of, because I'll watch tips from anyone. This is how I learn, you know, without watching videos or talking to other painters. I would never have thought thinning my paints when I was starting out. I'd be like thinking, well, why? That just takes more layers. That takes more time. And then when you're shown, you're taught, you go, oh, right, it's okay to take that a little bit more time. So just doing the fingertips there, just because, well, yeah. And there we go, I think. There we go. There's the skin on our ogre done. Oop. And in focus. So, hope you've enjoyed that. I'll see you again next week for part 3.